lining through the dark cloud shining, turn the dark cloud inside out till the boys come home.
Up here on the Bellewaarde Ridge in 1915 saw the arrival of 177 Tunnelling Company of the Royal Engineers. Now, why did we go underground? Why did we need these men? The war had become static. The war had lost its movement, and so we enter a period of siege warfare. And one of the very early forms of siege warfare was digging under your enemy, undermining your enemy. We had a view from here that gave us a commanding view over the northeastern part of the salient. Behind me, in the distance, you can see the church of Passchendaele sitting on top of the Passchendaele Ridge. Further to the east, you can see the town of Ypres down there, and then back across my right shoulder, you can see the church spire of the village of Westhoek in the very southern tip of the salient. If we lost this as an army, we had lost just about all of the high ground around here. So it was vital that we held on to this, and one of the only ways we were going to be capable of doing that was to combat the German mine threat. They were undermining us, we had to answer back to them. The mining war has left us with a legacy here, both on the surface and under the surface. On the surface, we see the remains of many of the craters. What we don't see is what's underground. But sometimes just the nature of the ground changes this. And if you notice behind me, there is a downward slope towards the farm behind. And about 20-25 years ago, there was a collapse of what we call the number 11 workings here. As you can see, there is a tunnel approaching, and then this tunnel widens out into a chamber. And inside this chamber, this circle is a shaft that takes you down to the deeper levels. What had more than likely happened, because we're on a slope, it was during the summer, is the water had started to drain downhill. It had exposed the top of a tunnel. The wood was no longer saturated in water. It had been exposed to the oxygen that is down below, and the wood had rotted, and there was a partial collapse, a sinkhole, which was filled up by the farmer. This is Royal Engineer Grave Cemetery. It's the smallest cemetery in the Ypres area from the Great War, and as you look around, you notice that it lacks headstones. And the reason being is actually a memorial to the men of 177 Tunnelling Company, the guys that are still down in the tunnels below the ground, in their ever-silent tunnels. The memorial was actually erected during the First World War. There was a young officer with the company, Emil Agner Dalgas. He was a Danish engineer, and just before the company leaves in September 1917, once the front lines have moved further on behind me during the Battle of Passchendaele, Dalgas erects a simple wooden memorial here with a list of the men that are still in the tunnels. Now, 177 then disappears down to France and fights the rest of the war, finishing the war in November 1918 in France. And you see in the war diary of the unit in December 1918, just a few days after the armistice in 1918, that Captain Dalgas and a group of men returned to this location to search for and locate their original memorial. They find their old original memorial cross blown down by shell fire, and they re-erect it here, and then they go home. The company gets disbanded in about March 1919. Dalgas then writes to the Imperial War Graves Commission in the early 1920s, campaigning for a permanent memorial to be erected on this spot here. And this is granted, and the Imperial War Graves Commission constructs the memorial that stands here now, the memorial being ready from about October 1923.